So hi everybody and welcome back to the C++ tutorial series for absolute beginners. This is video 102 and in this video we are talking about functions and about function parameters exactly, which has no names. And that is actually strange because we learned if a function is defined, we need function parameters with name to use that in the function. And let's see what happens if we have no names. Let's create a fast function. I create here a void my function parameter got no name. This is my function name, and I call here a int without a name, and I call here a int with a name, my telephone number. And now we watch what happens if this is even possible. And let's stop here at this point. Till now, we have created a function definition on top, which means we don't need a forward declaration, so we are going to use it in main. But the question is, can I use this one? So can I call this one? And how I use this one in the body, this no name type. So the answer is you can't use this one here. This created type here has no name, but we need a name to use it in our function body. We can only use something which has a name. This one has not a name, but this one has a name. So I can use only the second parameter, but not the first parameter. So let's make a demonstration. For example, I want to print out my telephone number on screen. I write std out and I print it out, because here I will get the argument for my telephone number and I can print this out, right? And I just print this out. But here I get also anything perhaps, but I can't use it. That's a problem. So first let's test if the compiler is complaining about this no name parameter. Let's compile. And the compiler says nothing, which means he accepted so far. So this is not illegal. You can do this. Good. We know now we can use parameters with no names. The problem is without a name, we can't use the parameter in our body. And that's normally the purpose to create parameters. Normally you would create a function. Let's create here another function. Void my function with parameter names. You would create here a function, for example, int number 1 and int number 2, for example. So that's the normal case, right? And the reason why you are doing this way is you won't use that. That's the normal case. So, and then you would write here std out, for example, number 1, and here space comma something like number 2, and here perhaps one more space, and here a new line. All right, something like that, right? That's this one we learned. This is the normal call. And now we can call it, give it arguments here at the calls. Let's call this one and make this a little bit clear. I copy this one here and I call it here with real numbers. Let's say, I just say number 1 is 3, number 2 is 5. And this is the normal case, right? So far we learned all things we know. And when we compile this, this will work. This is our 4.5, which we created here. And now let's call the second one. Let's see if this is working. So now without our name, let's see. I paste this here. I have here no name. So perhaps I can skip this one. And actually, let's see, we get a problem. So I said I'm not using this one here in the definition, right? Here, we are not using it, but that means not the caller can ignore it. So even we are not using it at all here, we have still to call it. So which means the question is with what number or with what? Actually, because we are not using it, we can call it with anything because it is just a dummy number. Dummy number means here just a placeholder number which is not used. So I can throw in anything, and I throw in just 0, comma, and then my telephone number. And of course this one must be also a number. So let's say my telephone number is this one. And you can see now it works, and let's show you this one here. This one works not, because this one is just one argument. For example, this one. And we need 2, right? We need definitely 2. And the first one I want not use. That's why I throw in for the first one a dummy value, which is says a placeholder value, which is not used. So let's test this. Okay. And we see, yes, it is used. And the first argument, the 0, which I give here, is just ignored. It's never used. It's just there, but it's not used. So that's interesting. So what we have to know is, as a beginner, that we will see in coding sometimes values which has not a name. But if they have not a name, it means most time they can't be used, at least not at this point. Perhaps there is another way to still give them a name, but at this point, when we call a function or see a function definition without a name and look in the body, we can't use it directly here. You can see I can call my telephone number in the body, I can use it and do something with it, but with this first number, with the first argument, whatever it is, I can't use it in this body here right now. So for example, it's 0 here. At this point, I can't use it. So that's interesting. And the second question is, wait a minute, when we can't use it, why we are defining it this way? So why is there a definition with a parameter which is never used? That makes no sense. Normally, if you can't use it, why not just copy this function here, throw it down. Oops, not so. And what I did, copy this again, put it down, and just get rid of this one. It's never used, and use the normal call here, like this one. This is what we expect, right? Because the first one is anyway not used. And you are right if you say that. In real, you can make this, but there is a problem. So actually there are many problems, but I will try to explain one problem. The problem is you will find code this in public or in general many times where they have created exactly something like this, or even with more parameters which are not used. And you have to use, but you want to still use this function. Right? So if you encounter a function, let's make one more function, void, let's copy this on top here. Let's make it so, copy this one, paste this one. Perhaps you say, I want to use this one, and this one I define it now with int, double, something like that. If you are unlucky, you will find something like that. And you can see now here, let's see what's going on. Int, double, it's okay. And as this is function name, let's see what's complaining. No, missing function header. There is no function header. Expect the declaration. This is. Oops, sorry. Yes. Now I'm stupid a little bit. I made that semicolon. Of course, this is our definition. You are not going to make a semicolon there. Happens sometimes. Whatever. And yeah, let's continue. So you can see this one is again a function definition, and we have here this strange looking function call. And if you want to call this one, and you have here this unnames, you have to use now dummy placeholder values for this one. And the reason for that is you just want to use this one variable with this function, perhaps, because this function has exactly the behavior you like anywhere in your code. But you are not going to create your own function at for example, at this is a bad example because this is little, but keep in mind a function can has also 100 lines of code, which is very complicated, or 1,000 line of code. And there are something like this, or what I showed here, many strange ints and doubles, which you are not interested in. You are only interested in this one, and then you are just taking this one and still call it. So you are going still to call this one. You are copying this one, and then you say, okay, I need this function, and for all other things I just throw in anything, 0 for this one. And then you say, okay, this one is the only variable which I want is this one here, the second one. Then you write here the only real value which you get, and for all other here you write 0, 0, 0, right? So 0, 0, 0, and here a tooltip is indicating what you are using and where you are. When you watch it, it's a little bit small here, but you can see I'm writing a double now, and now I type here this one, and I write one more double, I think. Okay, and that's it. And so, and now we have this. So, and the reason for that is, you, like I said, sometimes it is just provided and you won't just use it. As a beginner, you will learn to use that here. And the nice thing is you can just ignore this one. So all time when you see no name, means you can ignore it, and you are probably interested in only one parameter here. Then there is, of course, there are many other reasons why this kind of definitions exist, and there are, but it's a little bit too complicated to explain here in a practical way, because let's say later there are interfaces, we have not talked about it, and interfaces require signatures, and signatures means you are creating a function depends on another functions, and they have different implementations and something like that. And that's why this function here for you, for example, is implemented only with one value, but the same function here, what you see here, is implemented later for another person who implemented this in a different way with more values, with more names. And it's a little bit strange to explain on in a practical way. When we talk about interfaces, signatures and so on, I will show you this with examples what I mean, because then we will definitely encounter something like this, which is, yes, where we are not really using names. And you will just as a beginner, just keep in mind, if you see functions with which has no names, means they are not used in the body most time, right? Like here, this one has 2 parameters, but only this one has a name. This one will be used in our function body. We can use it because this one we can't use it, but careful, even we can't use this one here. The caller must call a value for it, and that can be irritating. For example, the second one here, I called it with 4. It can be anything. It is just a placeholder for this one. So this one is actually also can be 0, like the other ones, can be anything. And this should be not irritate you, because you have to check the definition. And I already said you how you can check. For example, you just hover over this name, and then this tooltip give you indicator. Actually this one is with function parameters, so this one has to be used. I was on the wrong one. Let's see this one. Okay, this was int number 2. That's actually not the one which I wanted. This one is this one is the right one. here, this one is this with int and int my telephone number. With this one has a placeholder. So here, oops, not this one. Here it can be anything, right? But careful, this first number is just a placeholder. And when you hover your mouse over it, you see there is a int, a value, but nothing else. When you hover over this one as well, but when you hover over this function name and look now the tooltip, it says there int without a name, and the other is int with a name, and which means this function will use only the second value here, probably not. When we learn interfaces and other things can change as well. So I hope it is not too confusing. It's actually very simple. You have just to remember at this point as a starter, if you see a function without a name, it is probably not used, but you have still call it with two parameters, even it is not used. Like I said, this one, the second here, is not used, the first one, but you have still throw in a value, which can be anything because it's not used. So, and this works, of course, also with return values and so on. So it's the same as for return values and a function forward declaration. Of course, this one can be, let's put it down. Then you have just declare this in front. Let's repeat this one as well. Compile. If it's after main call, we have to make again a forward declaration, and you see the forward declaration. Sometimes you just see the forward declaration, and in the forward declaration, you just see, okay, no name, no name, no name, no name, no name. And only this one is used, which means this function here at top is just using this one parameter, and this other are probably dummy parameters, which means nothing. There is nothing to use there. So I hope it was not too confusing, but you will definitely see, I think, during your C++ learning something like that as well. You should be not irritated with function without names, and we will talk in future a little bit more, not only function without names, there will be many other things without names, and we have to understand what this means. And this is a very good example that functions can have no names. And yeah, I think I stop here, repeat this, and especially read this perhaps in documentations why functions, C++ function parameters without names, what this means. The explanation can be a little bit too complex for beginners because it is not a common thing, right? So that means it is not generally used, because most time you will just find normal function here with normal names. And this is the normal case. This one is, let's say, not the normal case. All right, with that said, if you have any questions or any complaints, like all times, write it in the comments, and bye and good luck.